Welcome back. I'm Ruth Ann, and this is For Those Who Care, a podcast dedicated to caregiving. I've talked a lot in previous episodes about exercise. That was one of my ways to take care of myself, but it was also essential while I was caring for my husband Lance because I wouldn't have been able to take care of him to the level that I did if I hadn't been strong enough. And about 7 years before he died, I hired a personal trainer to help him and then realized that I also needed a personal trainer. And if you've watched this podcast at all, season one, Jenna was my co host, and I met Jenna through personal training. She was my last personal trainer, and we became friends after that. So today, Jenna is here to answer some questions about personal training. Hi, Jenna. I'm so glad you're here.
Hello, I'm also glad I'm here. This is such an exciting topic. This is something I love talking about and something that I have a lot of strong opinions and beliefs about. So I'm glad that we are doing a whole episode dedicated to fitness and exercise and just wellness, taking care of our bodies.
And it's so important anyway, but especially when you're a caregiver because you get so burned out and maintaining all of those things to keep you as healthy as possible are really important.
Despite having worked with a lot of elderly adults, I worked with a lot of seniors because the facility that I was at, it was a community rec facility, and so we had a wide variety of people to include a lot of seniors and elderly adults. So despite having worked with a lot of that population, I had never worked with anyone who had a lot of mobility issues, and never worked with anyone who was a caregiver outside of there were a couple women who did have children with disabilities who they were taking care of. But I think that even looks a little different just physically than what you were dealing with Lance, just because he was a full grown man, and a large man at that. Like he was well over 6 foot.
He was 6 feet tall.
6 feet. Okay. So he was a big guy. So it was a lot. It wasn't like you were trying to move around somebody who was 5'6", or even a child who you could just pick up and carry. So I could see immediately that you had some just physical needs that maybe a lot of other people didn't have. So it was a challenge for me at the beginning, but I really appreciated the opportunity to learn through it. So.
Well, initially, when I started with personal training, it was just that I had gone back to the gym and I thought I just need to be fit because I don't have the energy that I used to have. And at that point, I was in my early 40s and I just really needed the exercise because exercise just makes you feel better. I don't know. I think it's probably true with everybody, but when you're tired, you think I'm too tired to exercise and you don't think if I exercise, I'm not going to be as tired. It seems counterintuitive, but it really isn't.
It's kind of consistent among people that, I would hear people say, "Oh, I thought I was too tired to come to the gym. And so I, thought about it for a while and decided to finally come. And now I feel better and have more energy." And just in general, right? Oh, I didn't have a lot of energy. And so I thought I didn't have enough energy to exercise. And then once I started, then I had more energy. So it kind of, it works that way, and that your body is more, I think your body becomes more efficient. And I think just your like emotional state, right? Exercise has a way of kind of helping to produce some endorphins, and so you feel better about yourself. And so a lot of what can feel like depressive symptoms will kind of be alleviated by just moving your body in a way that makes you feel better, not just about yourself, but just a general sense of well-being. Um, I will say this one thing though. I think it's really important, and I want to mention this, that I've seen people in kind of a burnout phase, and they've known exercise to be kind of a solution to that, like malaise, or just almost like I said, like depressive symptoms. Like they just didn't feel good. and they're tired and they just want to stay in bed, or they just don't feel like they have energy. They want to sit on the couch or whatever. And so then they exercise and they felt better after having exercise. So because people have that experience, sometimes when they enter into like a burnout phase, they will still be trying to go and exercise, maybe even harder, because they're trying to get to that feeling of well-being again, and their body needs rest. So I do want to say that most of the time, exercise is going to make you feel better. It's going to make you feel more vibrant, give you more energy. But if you really are burned out and you really are running on fumes, your body may need rest. Like if you're not getting enough sleep and you're not getting enough recovery time, your body may need rest. So always keep that in mind. If you're feeling like maybe I don't know if this is actually good for me today, like maybe I shouldn't be doing this, like really listen to your body. If it's just oh, I don't really want to do this because it doesn't sound like it's going to feel very good, then maybe that's your body kind of, your brain kind of trying to trick you into staying on the couch. But really listen, if you really feel that in your gut, I don't know if this is what's best for me right now, do listen to that, because too much of a good thing can become detrimental.
Well, I will say as a caregiver that it's really important to maintain regular appointments with your doctor and get your doctor's approval before you go into any exercise program. We're not telling you to go out and start an exercise program. In fact, every single trainer that I saw, I had to have a doctor's note first saying that it was okay for me to go through this program. And that's a good point that you made, Jenna, about maybe it's not the right thing for you. There was a time, probably, I think it was about 2 years before Lance died, where I ended up severely anemic. I had changed my diet. I don't eat a lot of meat. I had changed my diet drastically and wasn't really thinking about it. And all of a sudden, I was severely anemic. And I went from doing Zumba 5 days a week, 50 minutes at a time, to I couldn't even get through the 5 minute warm up. And so then I did have to take probably about 3 months off just to get back to a point where I could just exercise regularly. And that's when I was training with you.
Those were fun times, even when you were anemic.
Well, let's talk a little bit about training. I want to know, what was it that got you into training and what made you choose functional training over the other types of training? Can you talk a little bit about the different types and why functional training was what spoke to you?
Exercise is such a big word and it can mean a lot of different things. Even people that have very physical jobs, perhaps they're exercising. People that, are runners or cyclists, they're exercising. People that lift weights are exercising. So we use that term exercise and fitness to encompass a broad variety of activities. Functional fitness is kind of a vein of exercise that at its core is meant or intended to mimic kind of more natural or everyday movement patterns. Something that um, a phrase that's common when you get into talking about fitness is activities for daily living, or ADLs. And those are just kind of a baseline for somebody that maybe you're thinking about training. What is it that they need to do every day? And so we would call those your ADLs. And yours was very different than mine. So functional fitness tends to look at that and say, what is it you need to do to get through the day? And then what is it you need to do to get through the day more efficiently? Um, and how can you become better at the things that you have to do every day so that there is some energy or time left over for the things you want to do? So functional fitness is going to be movement patterns, exercises, things that mimic more of what your natural movement patterns are going to be for things you need to do. And that's going to look different from person to person, but it's going to look really different from like traditional strength training, which is it will be movement patterns that are intended to maximize the engagement of a specific muscle or muscle group. So it's like the difference between creating a movement intended to push, um, maybe you are needing to move furniture around your house or something where you would be pushing, or even pushing yourself up off the floor. Maybe you get up and down off the floor a lot and you need to push yourself up off the floor, versus doing a bench press with a bar that's just meant to engage that chest muscle and stimulate it, right? Activate it and grow that muscle so that it becomes larger. A functional movement pattern might be throwing a ball. It might be something where you're pulling something forward from behind you, something that's intended more to mimic a natural body movement more so than just simply engage a muscle. So I think that the thing that really drew me into that is I just saw people, and myself, oh my gosh, myself struggling with just day-to-day activities. And mine was, whatever, managing a home and, taking care of kids and moving them around from spot to spot, or cleaning up after them, or whatever, yard work, um, more kind of domestic things. And I just thought, oh, I want to be better at those things. I'm not that interested in being able to do a bench press, like of a certain weight. Like that just didn't really, it didn't really speak to me. But, but I wanted to feel strong in what I was doing. And I wanted to be capable and able to do whatever it was I wanted to do. And maybe that was just projects around the house, or maybe it was moving my furniture around, or maybe it was, doing things with the kids. Like it didn't really matter. It was just whatever it was I wanted to do, I wanted to be able to do that. And functional training seemed to kind of fit that, because I could tailor it to whatever it was I was trying to accomplish at that time.
I had never even heard of functional training until I went to train with you, and you were my fourth trainer. So I was really happy that this was available. And I remember you going out to the van with me and watching me take the wheelchair in and out of the vehicle just to see what kinds of muscles I use and how I was doing that.
I would say that functional training has just like a little flavor of kind of like physical therapy to it. Like a lot of what you would do there is very similar. They're very similar exercises to what a physical therapist might do. And so I think functional training has become a lot more popular, but I would say in general, as a personal trainer, and I don't want to discredit or take away from anyone in that field, but I will say that when I first began learning the muscle groups, the basic movement patterns, and which exercises work or engage those muscles, like that was kind of the simplest entry point into personal training. So you come to me and you say, I'm a human being with human muscles, and I know that my arms move this way, and I know that my arms move this way, and I know that they move this way. And so I can check off the boxes. Okay, I've worked this muscle group, and I've worked this muscle group, and I've worked this muscle group. And I can, as a trainer, say, okay, we have worked all the muscle groups in your body. And you learn how to do compound movements, which means you're working more than one muscle group at a time. So you can really kind of make the workouts more tailored to how much time someone has. And that's kind of the entry point, as far as I can tell, into personal training. So that wasn't enough for me, because I wanted to understand how people's bodies moved, why they moved a certain way. And I would also see that like people couldn't make progress on those basic moves because something was hindering them. And almost always it was a movement pattern. And almost always it was something they did all the time, like you getting a wheelchair in and out of that van. And it's like, if I could kind of crack that code, or watch you move and do something that you do all the time, then now I can see, oh, well, that's what's happening, is you are moving these muscles this way, and that's creating a pattern, a movement pattern in your body. Your brain isn't consciously thinking about moving that wheelchair in and out anymore. It's just doing it. So you're actually training your body to move that certain way. And so then I can see where that's creating deficiencies in other areas. And then I can kind of go in and correct that with new movement patterns meant to kind of maybe undo or balance out those things that you're already doing. So I think as a trainer, that's a little more of a time investment because you can't just check off the boxes and say, okay, we worked all the muscle groups. You had a full body workout, or we're going to do just upper body or just lower body. I want you to move better. I want you to be able to do your ADLs better. And sometimes that takes watching you move, seeing where those little, maybe ineffective movement patterns or exaggerated movement patterns, where those things exist, and being able, like I said, to balance those or correct those or maybe undo those. That just takes a little bit more time. And you were really patient. So you were really good at not just wanting to. A lot of people go to a personal trainer and they want to lose weight and they want to see, results like this. And I think functional training is a little longer road to what people are looking for.
Yeah. And the training that I had before I met you was very effective for me. We had gone through some changes with Lance's health and he was needing more help around the home. So I was having to do a lot more assisting him just inside the house too. So I think we just got you at the right time. And yeah, I was doing this for longevity. I wasn't doing it for, I mean, I want to look good, but that wasn't the reason that I was doing the personal training. It was for my health and for caring for Lance.
Like you just said, I came along at just the right time, but I will say this, had we met 3 or 5 years prior, my approach to you might have been very different based on what your needs were at that time. So I was kind of approaching you based on what your needs were when I met you. And I will say this, probably, well, you asked me earlier what got me into personal training. And I will tell you this, I've always been extremely interested in the human body. And I think when I was, oh my gosh, maybe 13 or somewhere around there, I got a hold of a copy of Grey's Anatomy, like the old like textbook that was this thick, and I just thought it was like incredibly fascinating. And I couldn't really read it, right? I could read like little snippets, and it was so technical. It wasn't something I could understand a lot of, but I loved looking through it and seeing like all the different systems of the body and kind of how they work together and the layers of the body. And but here's the thing is I can't stand like blood and needles and scalpels and all that stuff. So like this was an opportunity for me to work on the human body with all the skin like staying intact. So I didn't have to have any of the like gooey parts of it. So that probably made me more interested in functional movement. And I wasn't at a place in my life where I was going to go to school for physical therapy, but that probably would have been a path kind of better suited to my particular, I would say, interests and tolerance for blood. So I loved watching how, and to this day, I still, I watch people move all the time. Like I watch people like, it's probably kind of creepy, but just I love walking behind someone and watching them walk. I love watching people like move, probably not so much at the gym because I think there's too much going on, but just out in public. I'll be standing in lines at the grocery store or whatever. And I just watch people and the way that they move and the way their body moves, how they lift their things out of their grocery store cart, watch people bend down to pick things up. I watch people walk because it's just fascinating to me how that skeleton is, it's like a machine. And basically I'm watching the way the skeleton moves. And so I'm always seeing like these little inefficiencies, and I'm seeing like these little, exaggerated movements here. And, it creates a deficiency here. And so it's very fascinating to me. And so I think that was how I always approached training, is I wanted to see how you moved first and how can we improve that. And a lot of times that was through functional training.
So you mentioned working with a lot of elderly people, older people, and is that because of the functional part of it? Because they're trying to maintain a certain way of life.
I think I really appreciated that here were these people that they just wanted to move better. They wanted to be able to get themselves up and down off the floor. That was something I learned really quickly, that anybody that was over about the age of 50, maybe even younger, I would ask them, are you comfortable getting down on the floor? Because I learned very quickly that that is something that you do not take for granted. Your ability to get up and down off the floor, like once that goes away, that is really hard to recover. Um, and so, I mean, sometimes that's all it was somebody said, I'm really struggling to get back up off the floor once I get down there. So I want to get stronger so that, I mean, this is kind of crazy, but it's like if I fell, like I need to be able to get myself up. So I felt like honored to have a part in helping someone's, um, maybe last third of their life, or whatever, to make that, um, more enjoyable, and to give them some more freedom. And just, I was getting people up off the couch. So that older population quickly became my favorite, because I feel like they were always there for the right reasons. They weren't trying to, and I don't want to be dismissive of anyone's reason for hiring a personal trainer, but nobody was trying to like get back into their high school pants. Right? Like seriously, it was never that. And it was never, um somebody trying to, regain their max bench press that they had in college. Like there were just these things that I would see sometimes people like kind of grasping at whatever was going on in their youth, and they just weren't aging very gracefully. And, maybe 35 or 40 hit them so hard and they didn't know what to do, and they were kind of rediscovering themselves. And I was much less comfortable in that space, because that wasn't how I viewed the human body. And so when I was dealing with the elderly population, man, they were just like, well, I just want to keep doing the things I'm doing. I remember I had one lady that she would go and hike and ski, and she was entering her like late 60s, early 70s. And she's like, I just want to be better at hiking and skiing. And I'm like, well, first of all, like, I still want to be hiking and skiing when I'm in my early 70s. Like, good job, bravo. But I felt honored that I got to like kind of join her on that path to like keeping hold of that as long as she could, and like seeing like, I know I'm not going to get to do this forever, but I want to do it for as long as I can. And like that was so cool. Like let's keep you as active as possible for as long as possible. And maybe sometimes it was like, I can't get up out of my chair without my cane or my walker, and I want to get better. And I regain that? I don't know, but let's try.
Well, the reason that I wanted to talk to you about this was because of caregiving, but it really is so beneficial for anyone, especially like you mentioned, once you get over the age of 50, it can be hard to get up off of the floor, and needing a cane or a walker to get out of a chair. But what other benefits did you see in people who weren't dealing with caregiving or a disability? Because I don't think I've mentioned it in this episode, but you did also become Lance's personal trainer, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what other benefits did you see in your clients?
One of the things, like I mentioned, is that I would work with these members of this facility, and they would have their 4 sessions that they would have. They got 4 a year. And so there were plenty of people, because I worked there for about 10 years, and there were a lot of people that about every 3 months they would do an update, and I would write them programs, and they would do that program. And, and then 3 months later, they'd come and see me and we'd look at their progress, and I'd write them a new program. And so there were a lot of people that I had the benefit of watching them over the course of years. And maybe we weren't meeting weekly, but I was seeing them in there, on a week to week basis, just working out and then writing them new programs several times a year. So there were a lot of people that I got to kind of watch that progression. There was one in particular, and I remember I told her that she was my poster child for consistency. And this was a woman I met. One of the things I did at that facility is I taught a class called Strength Training for Women. And it was an introduction to basic strength training. And it was a 12-week course. And the first couple of weeks were really in a classroom. One of the things we would talk about is just like exercise theory and kind of the fundamentals and foundations of strength training. And so I would get these women that would come in for 12 weeks, and some of them they had varying levels of experience with exercise. This one particular woman, nothing. And she was in her I want to say mid late 40s when I met her. And I've talked a little bit about movement patterns, and I did a little bit of assessment with them. It was more of a teaching scenario, but there was a little bit of assessment, kind of movement assessment. And this particular gal, I mean, it was rough. She did not know how to move her body. She didn't know how to just do basic movement patterns, like a squat pattern or like a lunge pattern or just a press pad, like really anything that most people it would click with them pretty regularly because they were their natural, normal movement patterns. She just didn't know how to move her body. And part of it was she was so deconditioned because she had never done any kind of exercise outside of just like whatever she did during the course of her day, which was a desk job and so on and so forth. Very inactive. And she was so sweet and she was so patient as I was kind of correcting and saying, like, I don't move on. Don't move on until you've got this mastered. Well, all this to say that she made an appointment with me after this class was over, wrote her a program. And I remember her asking me, like, I can only come 2 or 3 days a week. Will that make a difference? And I said, if you came once a week, it would make a difference. Anything you do is going to make a difference. And this is true for anybody. Anything you do outside of what you're doing right this moment, in addition, you will see results from that. Now, the amount of time that it's going to take to really start seeing those results might be longer than if you were coming twice a week or 3 times a week or 4 times a week, right? Those results are kind of expedited the more times a week you're able to come in and practice these movement patterns, right? Really, that's all you're doing. You're just practicing them with weight, with resistance. But so she said, I can only come in 2 to 3 days a week. And I just will never forget watching that woman come in consistently every single week. She would come in, and every 3 months she would set up a new appointment and we'd make a new program. And I just remember being blown away by the progress. And not only did she lose 50 pounds, probably over the course of, I would say, 1.5 years. And she wasn't dieting. Now, mind you, this woman was not dieting. She just wanted to be more active and feel stronger. This became a lifestyle. Pretty soon her husband was coming in with her. Pretty soon her kids were coming in with her. And this just became a lifestyle for this family. And I watched this continue on for years and watched her get stronger and stronger and stronger. And this was a woman who, when I first met her, she could barely get herself back up off the floor. And she couldn't move well. She was awkward and kind of clunky. And I know she got frustrated with me at first because I was like, no, try this again. I just watched her pretty soon, she's in there doing bench presses and doing max squats and all this crazy stuff. And she's going on hikes and then they got bicycles and they were going on bike rides and it completely changed this woman's life 2 to 3 days a week. And it was just like that picture of this is what consistency will get you is your life will be changed. So I always used her as the example of this is beneficial for anyone. And you do not have to live here. You do not have to be here 5 days a week. You don't have to be here for 3 hours a day. 1 hour, 2 to 3 times a week, and her life was completely changed. So I would say that it's extremely beneficial for everyone to introduce some kind of physical activity into their life.
For so many reasons, and we've talked about that a lot before. The emotional benefits for me were huge. That was my therapy exercise. Going to my counselor and going to the gym, that was my two forms of therapy. So, and by the time I met you, by the time you started training me, I'd already been working out with trainers for about 3.5 years, I'd say. So, like I said, you were my fourth trainer. I've just for any caregiver who is interested in maybe just doing something for themselves, but also being able to take better care of their loved one, what kinds of things would you recommend that they could look for when hiring a personal trainer? But also, could you talk a little bit about the benefits that you saw in me from when we first started until I stopped training with you? Like, what kinds of differences did you see in me and the way that I was able to handle my caregiving responsibilities because I was doing the training?
So I'll start with the last part of the question, because I think like when you were asking that question, I instantly got a picture of you. I would say that, and you could probably speak more to what was behind this, but you were very tense when I first met you, and a lot of your movements were very tense and jerky, and you didn't have the flow of movement. I don't know how else to describe it. Like probably like range of motion.
I can interrupt you here really quick and just say that Lance had been going through some serious medical issues, and it had been about a year and a half. But for the 6 months leading up to when I first met you, his health was declining rapidly, and he was needing a lot more of my physical help, where he had been fairly independent. He had a lift chair, he had a walker, but now he was needing me to help him get out of the chair and help him get out of bed. And so life was very stressful and tense. And yeah, the movements were, I was sore.
So probably what I was seeing was a lot of kind of inefficiency, just from purely physiological standpoint, inefficiency in your movement, which I saw a lot. As I would see it honestly, that what I saw in you, which explains a lot because of where you were at in life, it was a lot of what I saw with elderly adults, where they just became very inefficient. Their movements became shortened, and they were moving more from a smaller muscle group rather than from kind of their core, like integrating a lot of muscle groups into one movement. They were just using like whatever muscle was right there at that moment. And so there were these very inefficient movements, which would create you being sore and exhausted and not feeling like you could do it. Like probably causing back issues, neck issues, like so there's a lot of things. So I would say inefficient movements, which also creates this tension in your body because you're just stiff all the time. So I think that was what I noticed changed in you the most is I felt like you were open to moving differently. And so I don't know if you remember how much time we spent the first couple times I worked with you, just literally me watching you do different movement patterns. So I kind of had a baseline of where you were at and where we were starting. And then we kind of worked from that. So, okay, how can we improve this movement pattern, that movement pattern? And that kind of informed how I, created your workouts and what we focused on. And so I watched you become way more efficient in your movements. And so even despite everything that was going on in your life, you didn't appear as tense. You appeared more confident in your abilities to take care of him and to move him around. And just even the way you pushed his chair changed from the first time I met you till the end of our time training together. You were just you seemed more capable. I watched you engage, like, I don't know, I just watched you engage different muscle groups, being able to accomplish your tasks, as opposed to when I first met you, it seemed like everything was kind of forced. So,
I will say, looking back on that time as you were talking, I remember just feeling more freedom in my movement as our training progressed. And that's something that I hadn't experienced until I trained with you.
well, like I said, I love watching people move. I'm fascinated by the human body and how that machine, of the like I see a person and I see the skeleton and I see the kind of muscles moving that skeleton around like a marionette or like a robot. And so it's like, how can that be smoother? How can that be more efficient? Um, and that's what I was watching with you. And you had asked, like, what would a caregiver like look for in a trainer? And I mean, it's kind of hard to say because it's like, as a trainer, you can only go off the information that you're given. I think a good trainer is going to ask a lot of questions. And so I would look for somebody that is asking good questions, like, tell me what you do in the course of a day. And I would really lean towards someone that would say, show me how you do that. Like, I would ask people, what is it you do for a living? Not because I mean, obviously I want to know about somebody, to make conversation, but also, what do you do for a living? Because you might do some job that I've never seen and I have no idea what that looks like. But once you show me what you do all day, like, that's going to answer a lot of questions that I have about, like, why are you moving like that? Once you just show me what you do all day, oh, obviously you're going to move like that because this is what you're doing for 8 hours, 5 days a week. So I think a good trainer is going to ask you, like, so show me what that looks like when you have to, transfer this person that you're caring for. If you have to transfer them in and out of their chair, what does that look like? How do you do that? I would say, as a caregiver, somebody that's just checking the boxes of, we worked all the muscle groups, maybe that's not going to be as effective at making your day-to-day life more efficient than maybe it might for someone else. I would say somebody that asks a lot of questions and somebody that wants to watch you move in the way that you would normally move. That answers way more questions than a 1 hour interview would.
And I will say that that changed for me over the years. Like I said, I'd already been working with trainers for about 3.5 years before I met you. And my responsibilities as a caregiver changed drastically in that time. So it was more effective for me to just go in, and I was looking for more just the strength and the emotional, the high that I get from exercising. And that was enough for me then. So it could also change for caregivers over time, as their responsibilities change. But we also did have Lance work out with you. And actually I had Lance working out with a trainer before I started with a trainer. And I saw so many benefits in him, working with a trainer. And then it was very different once he started training with you, or once he started training at the rec center, because I think his other trainer was also a functional trainer. He did a lot of things for Lance that the other trainers hadn't done. But how did you approach training Lance, given his limited mobility and some of the other issues that he had? How did you adapt movements to his abilities?
It was probably the most challenging thing I had because he was so limited in his movements. And um, it really made me kind of stop and think about why is he doing this? Why is he here? He's not trying to reach his max bench press, right? He's not even trying to get himself up off the floor anymore. He's simply trying to increase his energy levels. He's trying to um, maintain or retain as much muscle mass as we possibly can. So the focus became like, what is it he can do? And how do I maintain that, help him maintain that for as long as possible? And so it was really challenging because I had not worked with anyone in that space prior to working with him. So I think I relied a lot on you. I asked you a lot of questions and deferred a lot to you. I had to kind of watch him and how he reacted to different things. That was really important to pay close attention to, even just his facial expressions and the tension in his body and just little micro differences in how he was moving between this set and this set. Like, was I noticing a lot of weakness, kind of creep in where he could only really do one set? Like maybe that was too much for him. Or were we just doing it over and over and over again and he needed a little bit more challenge? So I had to watch him a lot to make sure that he was continuing to be challenged, because strength training is only as effective as the level of challenge it provides to the body. So unless it is challenging the muscles in some way, it's it's not going to provide the result maybe that you're looking for. So finding that sweet spot with him where he was being challenged, but it wasn't too much, like that was tricky. And I really enjoyed the opportunity to help him and to just kind of grow my own awareness of paying close attention to people and watching, like I said, just watching their face, watching their facial expression change, between sets, where I can see like, okay, that was more challenging or that wasn't challenging at all, you know. So I think it really made me a better trainer. And it, like, quite honestly, it made me more aware of just kind of gratitude for my own health and abilities. So I think it gave me like a little more grace kind of for people and even for myself. So just watching him work so hard.
Oh, and he loved working out too. He was an athlete before he became disabled. So being able to continue working out at the gym was such a big deal for him.
Well, and he always put in like 100%. He was so fun to watch because I could tell he always wanted to do more than what I could allow him to do, but he loved it. And I just would watch him focus. I would watch him concentrate. I would watch him like just kind of dig in and put in effort. And so it was very inspiring. And like I said, it helped me develop just a little bit more grace for myself and for others. Just watching his level of effort. So I loved working with him. I loved working with both of you.
Oh, you make me cry. Oh, it was just thinking back to that time, how excited he would get when it was time for training. And it gave him a sense of purpose because he didn't he didn't leave the house very much anymore. And there were very few things that he could still do. He was only in his 40s. So
Yeah.
to be able to work out with a trainer and maintain some of his strength, it really, like I said, it gave him a sense of purpose. And that's something that we all need.
And like I said, and it benefited me too. Like, so that was the cool part, is there was like this kind of this synergy that occurred every time we were working together, and it grew my relationship with you. Like, we became close. Like, the whole time was very precious to me. And so I really appreciated just the opportunity. And I did, so I did not feel up to that challenge. Like, I took him on as a client because I knew he needed somebody. I had a relationship with you, and I knew that I knew enough about just movement in general that it's like, okay, this is still a human body. It's just moving a little differently at a little different level. And so these same principles still apply. So just kind of walk those back a little bit. Where would you start with someone here? Where would you start with someone here? And so it made me think, but I did not feel up to that challenge, like, whatsoever.
Well, I would have never known that. I know you told me that. I think it was long after you were done training him. I don't know that you really shared that with me in the beginning, and I never saw that you felt like maybe you weren't up to the challenge. You did an amazing job with him. But I'm curious, what kinds of benefits did you see in him? He was already working out with a trainer, so you just took over from another trainer. But what kinds of benefits did you see in him as the years progressed and you continued to train him?
I saw the maintenance. That's what I saw. And so when I came into your life and when I started working with him, he was not at a point where I think I was going to do anything to regain any amount of mobility. Like, that was not our purpose, and that was not a reasonable endeavor because his health was so fragile at that time. And what I saw was somebody that was just fighting to maintain the quality of life that he had for as long as possible. Because, I mean, I I was watching, and I don't know if we've talked about this, but I was watching his health fail, and I was watching him kind of slip. And so, and realizing, like, I hope that what I'm doing is making a difference. But I would see that, well, it was an act of faith, really, is what it was, because I did believe that what we were doing was giving him minutes and hours and days. Like, we weren't adding years to his life at this point, but we were adding minutes and hours and days, and realizing how valuable that was, and realizing how um, that helped you, how it helped him. It gave him something to look forward to, and it gave him an opportunity to hang on to um, his wellness for as long as possible, right? Um, or maybe not wellness, but his fitness, right? His ability to just move. All, like, he was holding on to that, and it was like, I knew he didn't have a lot to hold on to, but it was like, let me give you as much as you can, as much as I can help, you know, help you retain. I'm going to do that. And it was hard, because there were days when it maybe felt like, I don't know if I've helped him at all. But when I would come back and see that, well, we're doing this for another week, clearly this is helping. And when he would have maybe episodes where he would go into the hospital or something would occur, and I would see um, the decline that would occur so quickly. Like, that was because I had never been around anyone that was in this state of disease or anything like that. So it was crazy to see how much he could decline so quickly.
And that was initially what got me to hire a personal trainer, because for a period of about three, 3.5 years, he had been in and out of the hospital constantly. And he would go from the hospital to an inpatient OTPT rehab because he could no longer get out of bed after he'd been in the hospital for a week or two. So he'd have that OTPT rehab, and I would see him. He would become stronger so quickly during that maybe 10 days to 2 weeks, as inpatient OTPT rehab. And then he would come home, and I was just his nagging wife. So I couldn't get him to continue with the program that they had set up for him. So I'd leave it out for him, and he would do it for about a week, and then it would just taper off, and I would see him decline again. And then he'd end up back in the hospital. And this went on for, like I said, 3.5 years. And I finally hired a personal trainer, and I saw those hospitalizations decline so much. He was not in and out of the hospital like he had been. But yeah, when he did go back into the hospital those few times, it would zap his strength like that. And it would take a while to build back up to it. So all of those years that he was doing personal training, he would also do physical therapy in our home and occupational therapy at times. And those were sporadic. It wasn't continuous for that last 10 years of his life. But what you did for him improved his quality of life. Like you said, it wasn't years that we were adding to his life, but it improved his quality of life for the day. And that's all we were looking for, was today. Today is going to be a good day.
I think probably more than anything, that experience kind of informed how I view my own health. And it was extremely impactful because I saw that, like, everybody's at a different place, and everybody, I mean, we say that, right? We say it so easily. Oh, everyone's, at a different level and different, you're all on a different place on your path or in your journey or whatever. But that was like really an extreme reality. Like you said, we were making that day better. And everybody that I had encountered up until I encountered Lance, we were looking at, we can probably make years of your life better, right? And in varying degrees. So there was this variety of people that I encountered, and Lance was like way over here, and I hadn't seen anything between that. So it was like maybe shocking at first, but then it was like I viewed my work with him as sacred, because it was like I was seeing the value of every single minute of a person's life, and the quality of those minutes. Like, it matters. It's not about, is this going to make him able to go, improve his skiing, right? This is not, is this going to, increase his quality of life over the next 10, 15, 20 years? This is today going to be better because I was a part of it? Whoa, like that was so cool. It was so cool to me, and it just gave me a perspective that those minutes are important and they matter, and they're sacred. And if you're here on this earth and you're breathing oxygen, you have a purpose. And so I always believed that, but he showed me that in real life. That's like every second matters.
It sure does. And especially with him, because he was so young. I mean, he was 25 when he got sick. And I just wanted his quality of life to be as good as it could be, and keep him as strong as he could be, so that he could continue to experience life. I mean, had he not been working out with the trainer, I I know that I wouldn't have been able to take him on all the trips that we went on, even if it was just day trips. Getting him in the car and out of the car was so hard if he didn't have the strength to do that himself, to be able to stand up and move himself into the van. I wouldn't have been able to do that for very long. He was 6 feet tall and around 200 pounds. I'm only 5'5". That would not have been possible for a long period of time. I mean, I know that I would have burned out from that, but because he was able to train and maintain his strength, he worked out, I think 3 times a week is what he did with you. And it just, like I said, being able to get him in the car and go watch the sunset, that was amazing. And we wouldn't have been able to do that all those years if he hadn't been working out.
You did a really amazing job. And I want to add one other thing. And we didn't really cover this, but just as an encouragement to anyone who might be thinking about hiring a personal trainer for themselves, for a loved one, as a caregiver, as just somebody that wants to improve their health, whatever. Um, when I became a trainer, one of the things that shocked me was how often people perceived me as some kind of an authority figure and somebody that they had to answer to. And it was very, very, very strange because like you're hiring me. I'm working for you, and yet you come in, and I don't mean you personally, but my maybe a client, they would come in and they would apologize to me. Well, I didn't get in this many times this week, and I really didn't have a great week, or whatever. There was just this like they owed me some kind of an explanation. It was really hard for me to kind of draw out of people like, I'm working for you. You tell me what you want. I will tell you if I think that that is possible, and I will do my best to guide you toward that. But I'm working for you, and you don't have to explain yourself to me. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I would encourage everyone, if you are thinking of hiring a personal trainer, just be careful of anyone that maybe makes you feel like you have to do things that you don't want to do. Somebody that maybe treats you as if they have some kind of authority over you. Just keep in mind, like you are hiring them and they are working for you, and you need to be guiding what it is you want. You're hiring them for their expertise, but you're not hiring them to be your drill sergeant. And obviously, unless that's what you want, but they should be asking you, is that what you want? That shouldn't be the default. So I just want to encourage people, like that person should be working for you, and they should be doing what you want, not what they want. So that's all.
That's really good advice because I've experienced both. What would you like listeners to take away from this conversation, especially someone who is caring for a person with a disability, or even the person with a disability or chronic illness who is the one working out? What would you like them to take away from this?
The way that your body moves is going to impact how you move in the future. So how you move now is going to impact how you move in the future, regardless of where you're starting from. That matters. And so if you're feeling like you don't have time to address that, I would argue you don't have time not to address it. It's so important. And you are actively making your body stronger and more efficient, or you are actively breaking it down, breaking your body down. So don't think that there's this space in life where like you're standing still, you're sitting still, because life is constantly moving. And so you are either actively getting stronger or you are actively getting weaker. And it's not, like I said, and that's why I told the story of that gal that I said was my poster child for consistency. One, day a week of consistent and purposeful movement will make a difference. I'm not going to say can, will make a difference in your longevity. It will make a difference in your quality of life. It will make a difference on your just your overall comfort, like how you feel day to day, your well-being. And I would even venture that it would impact your psychological outlook, your emotional well-being. Like it will impact your life in multiple areas. So don't believe the lie that, well, I only have an hour a week, so why bother? Oh my gosh, then let me have you for that hour a week to try and give you a chance at maintaining some of your strength or mobility or all those things. So just know that doing anything consistently, anything is better than doing nothing.
Well, I think that's something that I needed to hear today, Jenna, because it's been 5.5 years since you and I worked out. It's actually been more than that. But and I do exercise now, but I'm not doing what I should be doing. So I needed to hear that. It's going to make me get back into a better routine because being over 50, I need to make sure I can still get up off the floor. Well, I so appreciate you having this conversation with me and sharing all of your expertise on training and reminiscing with me a little bit about Lance. I always love when we're able to do that. Thank you so much, Jenna.
You are so welcome. This has been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, I love talking about things that I think matter. And I think this matters. And then getting to talk about Lance a little bit, like you said, and reminisce, that's just a bonus. So, anyway, thanks for having me on to talk about this. And I look forward to whatever our next conversation is.
I look forward to that too. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. I'll see you next time.
Bye.